Hello, in this video we'll be finishing our work with circles, and in this video we're going to be working with how to graph a circle on your calculator. Now your calculator is only set up, the TI-83s are only set up to graph functions, and circles are not functions because they do not pass a vertical line test, in that we'll discuss that in chapter 2, but we can't just graph the whole circle on the graphing calculator. So what we have to do is solve it for y, and we have, as we have here on our graphing calculator, it's a little frozen. There we go. We have y equals. So when we graph these, we have to solve these for y. So in this case, the first one, if we solve for y, we're going to have y squared equals 16. We're going to subtract this x part over, so we're going to have x minus 2, or I'm sorry, x minus 4 squared. So first of all, we take this piece right here and we subtract it from both sides. So we get this set up. And then we're going to need to take the square root of both sides to get y. So we're going to take the square root of this side and the square root of this side. Now when we do that, remember, square root, we have to have a plus and minus symbol. So that's why we're going to graph two different graphs on this graphing calculator. So we're going to get y here, but we're going to get a plus and minus the square root of this information, 16 minus x minus 4 squared. Now, in your graphing calculator, you're going to put both of these in, one in each y value. So when we're over here on the graphing calculator, we are going to put the square root in. We'll put the positive square root there, and we're going to put the negative square root in the bottom one. So we're going to have a positive square root here and a negative square root here. These should be exactly the same equations, and they should match this right here, 16 minus. So we're going to type it just as I see it. So I got 16 minus parentheses x minus 4 parentheses squared, and then we're going to have one more parentheses to end off that square root. All right, and then we're going to type exactly the same thing in the second equation, and we'll get 16 minus x minus 4 squared parentheses. Okay, so usually when I start this off, I use the standard window, which was Zoom 6. That gives me a standard viewing rectangle. Now this top half of this graph is the positive square root, and this bottom half is the negative. That's how we get the whole circle. Now this doesn't look like a circle because the screen is wider than it is tall on this. So we sometimes will use a zoom feature, which is zoom square, which squares up the screen for you and makes it so that both the vertical and horizontal components are the same settings, not exactly the same settings, but it squares up the screen so that they have the same ratios, so you would be seeing a square screen. So I'm going to do the square, zoom square. We should be able to see closer to what a circle looks like. So this is our circle. We have our center at 4, 0. So 4, 0 should be the center right about here, and the radius is 4. All right, so this is what we would look for here. So we have to square it, we have to solve it, we have to put in a plus or minus, and we have to square the screen so that make sure it looks like a circle, not a oval or an ellipse. Okay, now let's take a look at the second example here. This one's going to take a little bit more work to solve. So I'm going to move this over So we're going to solve this one. We subtract this part from both sides. So we're going to put this over here. The x squared, or the minus x squared, we're going to put that over there and subtract it off here. So my first step would be y plus 2 squared equals 21 minus x squared. Okay, once I have that, then I still have to follow the same step here. I'm going to need to get rid of this square root. So I'm going to use a square root to get rid of that square, so I'm going to put that here as well. Remember, there's a plus or minus here. Okay, so that's going to eliminate the square here, and we're just going to have y plus 2. And it's going to equal plus or minus the square root of the square root of 21 minus x squared. Still working with the mouse is a little difficult. Alright, now we're just going to solve for y by subtracting 2 from both sides. So we're going to put a minus 2, and usually I write that in front because it doesn't get too confused with the square root symbol at the end of the square root symbol, so I'm going to write it out in front of that. So it's going to be y equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root. Now when we graph, we're going to graph one as a plus and one as a minus, just as before. So this is still going to be two graphs. Okay, but one will be plus, one will be minus. Alright, so let's go back here. We'll push clear, and we'll type in our equations. So negative 2, this one's going to be minus because it's down below. Negative 2 is minus the square root. And then on the top one, it'll be negative 2 plus the square root. And then we have to put the 21 minus x squared in parentheses. I need to do that in both of them. Move my cursor around here. 21 minus x squared. Alright, so these should be my two things. Remember, the little negative symbol looks smaller than the plus and minus, and we want to use that to get the right thing. Okay, we're going to do zoom. I always like to start off with standard. Zoom standard is 6. Standard viewing rectangle. So there's the top of my circle and the bottom. And I want to push zoom square, which is 5, to get it to look more like a circle instead of an ellipse or a oval. All right, and there's my circle. Now remember the center is 0 and negative 2, so it does look like it went down to negative 2. This does look like the circle's center down here. And we have two parts. Now you can see there's a little piece missing. The calculator has a hard time graphing vertical lines, so it will have a little piece missing here. In your graph, if you're drawing it on a piece of paper, then you should draw the whole thing. It's just a limitation of the graphing calculator. So that's using your graphing calculator. Remember, solve for y, put in two equations, one plus and one minus, and always do the zoom square so that you can see an actual circle. Now if you have any questions, give me a text, or I'm sorry, an email, and this will finish chapter or section 1.5.